Welcome to ThinkTech, raising public awareness about technology, energy, globalism, and diversification. As a part of the ThinkTech series, today's show is The Arts in Hawaii. I am your host, Donna Blanchard, and today I am talking with Ed Bourgeois of the... No, wait, let me say that again. I'm Donna Blanchard, and I am here talking with Ed Bourgeois of the Pa'i Foundation. Remember that we broadcast live on the internet at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, and 4 o'clock every weekday. All of our shows are streamed live on ustream.tv and Spreaker.com. If you want the links to our live streams or our previous broadcasts, just go to thinktechhawaii.com, and remember that we are broadcasting live from Pioneer Plaza in the heart of Honolulu. And if someday you'd like to join us downtown in our gallery for any of our shows, just write to j@thinktech.com. Ed Bourgeois is the managing director of the Pa'i Foundation here in Honolulu. He came to us from Anchorage, Alaska, where he was the director of public programs at the Alaskan Native Heritage Center. He is also an actor, director, playwright, deviser of theater, and Elvis impersonator.
But not today. But not today. I have been known to appear in an Elvis costume from time to time.
You're my first. I just have to tell you that.
Well, at some point in my stay in Honolulu, I'm sure that will. I brought it with me, so we'll see what happens.
Oh, I look forward to that day. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure to be here. Brand new to the island. Been here since the very beginning of September, and the time has just flown by. You know, all the parts of trying to settle in, finding a place to live, and transportation, and getting household goods here. The move from Alaska after 30 years was a little more challenging than I imagined when I just jumped in and made the decision to come to Pa'i.
Yeah, me too.
Mm-hmm. Sounds great on paper, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. A lifetime in one part of the country is what I came from, and you know, I didn't have to pack a lot of heavy clothes. But that's a big part of the culture shock, you know, of 30 years of mucklucks and gloves and boots and chopping wood and all of that stuff. I had to leave my chainsaw behind. You know, it was traumatic, but I could travel light. We certainly, ejected an awful lot of stuff after 30 years. Did you, okay, we're just going to go down this road because I find it very interesting how freeing it was to get rid of so much stuff. It was nearly a spiritual experience. You feel that?
I've had this happen to me multiple times. I was just talking to someone else about this morning. I was raised in a military family. I think that's part of my problem, my issue, is in my DNA is this constant need to move. And although you wouldn't imagine that, 30 years in Alaska, it was the longest. I'd never lived anywhere longer than 4 years at a time in my entire life. But my wife and I met there, we raised a family, and all those kids are out of the house now. And it was time for, it was a good time for an adventure, for something new and something different. But at several times in my life, I came to Alaska from New York and just walked away from everything I had. In college, my first experience in college, which didn't end well, I walked away from everything I owned there. So I've done it several times in my life, and it is really freeing. I mean, it's part of our human experience, right? We tie ourselves down to things unnecessarily at times. Involuntarily, or not. It's a security blanket, right? So we surround ourselves with all these things. And it can be an amazingly freeing experience to just whoosh, get on a plane and try something different. And just have a bag of slippers and t-shirts and shorts. I didn't own many pairs of shorts, so I have to shop.
I didn't own very many pairs of shorts, and for the longest time while I lived here, it always looked like I was on vacation because I was dressed like a tourist, because summer clothes are vacation clothes as far as I was concerned. So, when I met you at the Network of Ensemble Theaters Microfest here, I think you came up to me first. I was really interested in some sort of exchange of theater pieces between Alaska and Hawaii.
We met at the Namea, at the Hawaiian bookstore.
Yeah.
Namea, Hawaii, at the bookstore, because you were producing some devised theater, some theater pieces that had been written by the ensemble
Yes.
of actors, right?
Yeah.
So I'm interested in that kind of work. I have been able to meet people in the field that do devising. It's not my background was more of a traditional theater background, I went to a classical school, Catholic University, which focused on the classics, so more Shakespeare and classical theater. But I'm really interested in devised theater, and had in the last few years begun to work more with directors and writers. I still say we have, because I think the program still exists in spirit, and hopefully we'll find a new home for a Native Playwrights project, which we created at the Alaska Native Heritage Center. And at that time I was interested in talking with you about how we might be able to collaborate. At that time when we met, I was still at the Native Heritage Center in Alaska. Actually, I squeezed in an interview at Pai Foundation during that week that I was here. Yeah, I know. A little ethically challenged, but no, it's we all look for opportunities, and it was time for a change for me, and this opportunity presented itself with Pai. We can talk more about that. But when we met, it was really about figuring out if there might be a way to collaborate between programs that have to do with playwriting. And in this particular case, it was the program that I ran was a Native Playwrights project, principally for Alaska Native writers and for Alaska Native artists who wanted to learn to be playwrights. It really was kind of a boot camp. I'm really proud of the project. It was a 3-year program funded by the Ford Foundation that identified Alaska Native artists, Alaska Native people, anyone really, storytellers, anyone who wanted to learn how to tell their stories in this form that we know as a play. And we brought mentors from all over the country, Native playwrights from all over the country to mentor and sort of teach a boot camp. So we bring everyone together for a week and do this 10-day boot camp on how to write a play. And then each of the learning playwrights were paired with professional Native playwrights who mentored them through a year-long process of creating their first script, which is the key to the program. The mentorship was just amazing. I mean, and some of these folks, our candidates, our participants, were just in awe of, someone like Joy Harjo, who is famous, as a poet, is an amazing playwright on her own, in her own right, and to have someone like that mentor you, was a huge opportunity at no cost. I mean, it was all grant funded. So,
what an amazing program, and so dear to my heart and what we do at Kumukuhoe.
And that's what I recognized when you were putting on in the bookstore, putting on this sort of homegrown, tell your own story, devised work. I thought there's a connection here that we could kind of work together on, because I'm just passionate about Native artists being able to tell their stories. Their stories are often sort of overlooked or somehow manage to get under the carpet, and yet they're the stories of the place that we live in.
Yeah.
They're of this place.
Or they become very insular, preaching to the choir.
Right. Right.
And we are all about, absolutely, we want to develop the playwrights and the artists and the internal audience, the local audience, but the next step is to get that out and share it. So yeah, here I was definitely interested in working with you, putting together some sort of exchange. And then after the conference, when I reached out to you, you said, "Oh, well, I'm here, actually."
I'm just down the street, yeah.
Yeah, I'm at the Pa'i Foundation, so we can have coffee.
Mhm.
I was anticipating a Skype. So what is it about the Pa'i Foundation that brought you here after 30 years
Well,
in one
I
place?
happen to know Auntie Vicky, who's the executive director, and got to know the foundation because of connection, a professional connection that we had as organizations. There's an arts management organization called the DeVos Institute of Arts Management that is a part of the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C., so everybody knows the Kennedy Center. One of their principal programs is this arts management program that teaches arts managers all around, not just the country, but around the world. They have a really strong international program where they bring fellows from institutions all over the world to learn the tools that are taught at DeVos. And DeVos was created by a man named Michael Kaiser, who's famous. He wrote a book called The Art of the Turnaround. He's famous for
That's why the name sounds familiar.
for taking organizations that are failing or challenged, or having difficulties, at risk of going out of business, and turning them around. And he started with the Kansas City Ballet. He's done the same thing with Covent Garden, or the Opera House at Covent Garden. Alvin Ailey, various institutions during his career that he went into, and with his sort of method that he teaches, very simple, technical and philosophical tools about nonprofit management, how to turn those things around. And so we had been cohort members of a cohort hosted by what the DeVos Institute does is they identify organizations all around the country. You apply and are selected. And they put a cohort together of about a dozen to 15 organizations from all around the country and bring them together and run us through our boot camp, our nonprofit management boot camp. And then we also have one-on-one mentorship and the opportunity to have them come and do site visits, look at the organizational structure, your books, at how you do your fundraising, all of those things, and make recommendations. So the Alaska Native Heritage Center, where I worked, was a member of the same cohort with Pa'i Foundation. So we do annual convenings, and I'd gotten to know Auntie Vicky for a couple years because of that, because we were meeting as peers at various convenings of the DeVos Institute in Washington, D.C., and at Pine Ridge in South Dakota, different places where they convened this group. And at the last convening in Providence, she sort of put a little note on the message board saying that they were looking for a managing director, and I just threw my name in the hat.
Wow.
And we were just finishing up a strategic planning process at the Native Heritage Center, which is just beginning to be implemented. It may have been just a little premature for me to leave the Native Heritage Center, but opportunity doesn't always come at the best time, right? But I'm really excited about the opportunities that exist for Pa'i, doing the same things that we had been doing. Like I said, at the Native Heritage Center, we've just gone through an entire strategic planning process around programs, around fundraising, around systems within the organization. And I see an opportunity to take all of that work, all those things that I've learned, and bring them to bear here. Because Pa'i is another indigenous organization, but it's an organization that's on the move in a very different way than the Native Heritage Center.
Can you talk about what the Pa'i Foundation is, what it does?
The Pa'i Foundation was founded in 2001 by Vicky Holt Takamine, who is the kumuhula of Pu'u Ali'i Ilima Halau. So she has a halau of a school of dance, of hula, that she's had since 1977. So she's a revered, respected teacher of hula. And so the organization is sort of based around the halau, around a school of hula and those students. but it has a much broader vision, and the vision is to preserve, protect, and perpetuate Native Hawaiian cultural traditions for future generations. So it's really about perpetuating Native culture, Native Hawaiian culture, now and into the future. And it was almost the identical mission as at the Alaska Native Heritage Center, and the mission of a lot of culturally based indigenous organizations. You know, it's about taking indigenous knowledge, which in this culture the Kumu have. The Kumu are the holders of this knowledge. They carry it forward for the next generations, right? That's what, and they teach not just dance, but language and the chanting, the traditions and values are all embedded in all of that artistic work, right? It's a little different from Shakespeare, although you know there are values embedded in Shakespeare too that are different.
I'm sorry, I
Sure.
need to stop you there.
Of
We're
course.
gonna take a short break. We're gonna come right back.
Okay.
Hold it. This is the Arts in Hawaii on the ThinkTech Hawaii series. I'm Donna Blanchard talking with Ed Bourgeois, and we'll be right back.
Aloha, I'm Nicole Horry for ThinkTech. For nearly half a century, the Hawaii Foreign Trade Zone No. 9 has brought the benefits of the Foreign Trade Zone program to Hawaii businesses and entrepreneurs. DBET, the Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism, operates Hawaii's Foreign Trade Zone program to encourage international business and economic development. The Foreign Trade Zone's mission is to increase the amount of international trading activity in Hawaii, thereby providing employment opportunities for the residents of our island state. For more information, see ftz9.org. I'm Nicole Horry. Mahalo.
Hi, welcome back. We are live. This is the Arts in Hawaii and on the ThinkTech Hawaii series, coming to you from Pioneer Plaza in downtown Honolulu. And we're going to go right back to where we left off. But I want to lead us into it by saying it drives me a little crazy to know that there are so many communities in which people are guests of a culture that is not only not recognized, but not respected. And I do not believe the blame for that falls on individuals you can shake your finger at. I'm not concerned with finding out where the blame belongs, but I am fascinated and so very appreciative of the work that happens within the arts to help bring that into our communities, bring the awareness of it in an uplifting, enlightening way rather than a finger shaking.
Well, that's the power of the arts. And I could get on a soapbox a little bit because I
have mine here somewhere.
I
just
have
a
really
moment.
specific. I have opinions about this, and it's why I've spent the last. Before I was at the Alaska Native Heritage Center, I directed an opera company. I mean, that's like a little bit different places on the artistic spectrum, right?
Yeah.
And very different constituencies, different art forms. I love opera. I love, but that's 400 years of culture. Opera is only 400 years old as an art form, and very specific, and supporters, and I think it's for everyone. It's a beautiful art form. We all sing, in every culture. But I have been drawn to, since 2006, I went to the Alaska Native Heritage Center. So from then till now, working with Native communities, and specifically with arts and culture of Native communities, because I feel like. And this is where the soapbox comes in a little bit. We're all guests. We're all guests, not just in this place, in any place where there's been where there's been colonialism, where there is colonialism. That's an effective history that we can't control as individuals. We can't control what previous generations have done, but we can live correctly today. And that has to do with respect. And I believe, not everyone will agree with me, but I believe there is preference of place for people who have lived in a place for 10,000 years. In Alaska, I don't know what Hawaiian cultures say, how long they've been here, but in Alaska, over 10,000 years. I mean, even archaeologists will confirm, will support that oral history that says we've been here over 10,000 years. And there is a primacy. I'm sorry, because the Russians took the land and sold it to the United States, and now we're all, there's statehood, and we're all theoretically Americans. We should all have equal the same rights. But I believe there is a primacy. There is a difference. There is a difference for people whose land it is, and we're guests in that place. Even though it's a state of the United States, I'm a guest here, but I'm also a guest of the earth. I mean, I think it has to do with a basic philosophy about who we are as people and how we support each other and how we respect one another. And some of those attitudes are, some attitudes that might disagree with me are colonial attitudes. They're attitudes that are about getting what's mine, or having the most toys before I die, or some of those attitudes that have to do with, in my opinion, a little bit short-sighted view of what we're doing here as human beings. One of my favorite expressions is that we are not humans on a spiritual journey. We're spirits on our human journey. We're here, we're just visiting for a short time. And there's a reason why we're here, and we need to figure out what that is. So to answer your question, I think that as artists, it's part of our kuleana. It's part of our responsibility to smooth the way for those stories to be told, and whoever's story, But I happen to work in arts and culture of indigenous peoples, and I think their stories, they've always been told, but by people who may not see themselves as guests, they're not essential stories. Until we sort of all accept and educate ourselves and come to an understanding that these are the stories of this place that are embedded in this place. These are the rains and the winds that fall on us and talk to us and affect our journey today. And it's important for us to know what those things are. That's my soapbox. I'll get off.
I appreciate your soapbox, and I will add to that that when you use the word, it's our kuleana, I think that you and I are in, I feel that we are in a very privileged place as far as the artistic landscape goes, because we do have the privilege and the responsibility of informing in an experiential way, which is really powerful. And so along with that comes great responsibility. And maybe looping back to where we started just a little bit, the freeing experience of relieving ourselves of so many things is exactly what we're talking about, getting back to who we are as those spiritual beings having an earthly experience. How much, let's talk about devised theater,
okay.
Shall we?
Sure.
Go to that now. How would you define devised theater in your work?
Well, I'm really new to it. I really am. Like I said, I had a very sort of traditional theater background, and we didn't even do that much improvisation where I went to school. It was really more about technique and language, and I had just a wonderful opportunity to join a group of people at Pangea Theater in Minneapolis, Minnesota last year. And Pangea is a totally multicultural theater community, theater organization that is very interested in, again, raising up the voice of minority directors and directors of color and female directors, because beginning with the premise that we live in a colonized place, everywhere in the country. And in a colonized place, the principal voice is the male voice. It's, you know, it's the white male voice. That's where we live. And to speed up the process of equality of voice, you have to focus on those a little bit. So what they're doing is they're creating at Pangea, they're creating an institute of directing and ensemble creation, specifically focused on actors, directors, writers, theaters of color and for women and of women artists. And I got invited because I work at the Alaska Native Heritage Center, and they were looking at having as much representation as possible from the Native community. I'm French Canadian, but I'm part Mohawk, and because I've worked at the Alaska Native Heritage Center for quite a while and created programs there. So I got invited to attend and be part of this institute, a sort of a pilot program. It was a really wonderful week of being with theater artists and everyone sharing what their process was. And they were all artists that devise. They were all from ensembles. So for the audience's sake, not for yours, because you're leading with the question, but to sort of explain a little bit of what devising is, in the traditional theater, it's top down, just like that's sort of that European male concept, which is there's a director who's in charge, and then all of the underlings beneath, right? The director takes a script that someone has written, some other artist has written, and the director is in charge and tells everyone what to do, where to stand, how to think, how to react, what to feel. It's that, and it's usually his concept, right? A top-down artistic creation. It's really one person's creation with all the other participants, the actors, the designers, the technicians, all being pawns on that person's chessboard.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
In devised theater or in ensemble theater, you have a group of artists, all the actors, and nobody's in charge. And you create together, you give and you take, and it has its own set of problems, because when there's no one driving the bus, which is what we're used to, everyone gets a little bit scared, right? Like, how are we going to stay on the road? Well, maybe everyone takes a hand at some point on the steering wheel, or you all agree together that, you know what, Annie's got the best eyesight, so she's going to drive the bus, you know, and we'll all agree that she's going to have an overlook, she's going to look over the process and make suggestions from that meta level. But we all agree and we all accept that. We all sign on for that. But it's deliberately not a top-down process. It's a little more socialist process where we all work together. No one's in charge, no one's voice is stronger than the other. And that starts with that sort of place coming from a place of respect. We respect each other's work, we respect each other's eye and voice, and so devised theater is creating theater based on that process. And it might be just from a song. We're going to agree, we're going to take this song and we're going to make something, a story happen out of that. Or it might be a prop, or it might be one little thing that you devise, you create theater from, not from a script. Not from a playwright's finished script.
With each member informing each other and supporting.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, we have to take a break.
Okay.
We'll be right back. This is the Arts in Hawaii on the ThinkTech Hawaii series. Back in just a moment.
Aloha, I'm Jay Fidel, founder of ThinkTech Hawaii. We are a digital media nonprofit that covers things that matter to tech, energy, diversification, globalism, and progress for our state, the state of Hawaii. We broadcast on community television and on Oceanic Cable Channel 16. We also stream our shows and interviews live on the internet as both radio and video, and of course we post them here on YouTube. We collaborate with the Hawaii Venture Capital Association to present monthly luncheon programs on subjects of interest to the business community. And we write for the Honolulu Star Advertiser. ThinkTech works hard to raise public awareness in Hawaii. Check out our website, thinktechhawaii.com, and come to our YouTube channel, ThinkTech Hawaii. We hope you support our mission and that you like our work. I'm Jay Fidel. Mahalo.
Hi, we're back. This is the Arts in Hawaii on the ThinkTech Hawaii digital series. I am your host, Donna Blanchard, proud managing director of Kumukukua Theater, and I am here talking with Ed Bourgeois, who is the managing director of the Pa'i Foundation. Where do we go next? Let me revisit one small item in our previous conversation, and that is not really a small item. It is the colonial construct of theater and expression that is a male perspective is so dominant in our world that I think a lot of female playwrights write from a male perspective. They don't realize how much it just fits into a formula that's already there. And I don't think you really get to experience that in the vacuum in which many people operate, when you can get out into ensemble work and just breathe in a space with people who are there for the same purpose of discovery.
It's hard work. I think we all, and particularly artists, people who are in this business, have in the core of their motivation a desire to please. Right? I mean, it's why a lot of people are on the stage. They like to hear the applause, or they like to, or they may have a more philosophical purpose. They want to make some kind of change. But for most people in the arts, there's a desire to create harmony and to make something beautiful and to please. And so it's very easy to fall into someone else's construct. And we've all been raised as actors that you go to an audition and that person could humiliate you and you'll take it, right? Mm-hmm. Because it's about pleasing. It's about passing the test and making good. And I could go into how our educational system follows the same structure, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But particularly in the arts, when we do what we do, very, very few actors go in and say, this is what I'm saying and this is what I'm doing, and if you don't like it, don't hire me. They usually will do whatever they need to do to get the job because it's so competitive, and you want to look right, and you want to dress right, and you want to have your hair cut right and use the right words and say the right things. Come on, those are people that want to please, right? So it's very easy to fall into what you think someone else's idea of success is, so that you succeed. And so we fall into these things without even knowing it sometimes. But when you're with a group of people who are deliberately not that way, who are contrary that way, and who deliberately respect one another, you catch yourself all the time. All of us catch ourselves all the time with how we think, what comes out of our mouth. Are we honoring another person with what we say? Are we listening to them? Are we raising them up? Even in just our daily interaction, if you really think about, if you're in an environment where that is brought to the forefront, where everyone is focusing on that, it's amazing what it does for how you think. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm a joker, and I found myself having to stop myself and bite my tongue time after time after time every day as we work together, because normally I would make a joke and it might offend somebody, or it might be inappropriate, or I never thought about how that person of color, that woman, that transgender person, whatever it was about, whether it was about sexual identity, race, culture, gender, that's all of our life. and we're not used to necessarily being careful about where we tread and how we work with people, how we just interact with people.
Yeah.
And so I don't remember what your question was now.
We're done with it anyway. You answered it. We're good.
But anyway, yeah, that male construct, it's what we work in, and we have to be deliberate about turning that on its head.
Yes. In the devised piece that you saw us do at the NET conference, that began with there were hands on the wheel, to continue your metaphor, and we had a wonderful woman, Lisa Formosa Parmigiano, who was a member of the Actors Studio, and created a process of collaborative writing that is still taught in at the Pace School. She had her hands on the wheel, but she began by working with us to create a collaboration contract, which we all signed, agreeing that we were going to respect and listen and feel and follow our intuition, and all of these things that needed to be in place in order for that group of people to create 3 plays in 10 days, but create 3 plays that were outstanding. They were important because they were coming from those ensembles.
And you challenge yourselves, and you work by a set of ground rules. We did the very same thing. The whole first day was talking about how do we work together? What are the rules for working together? What do we do and don't do? And
how eye-opening to think, wow, I didn't even think about that. I had defined right and wrong, right? Yeah. And who gets to define right and wrong? I think viscerally, we know, but we follow someone else's structure for that. Okay, so let's go back, Ed.
Back on track.
When Ed was a wee little lad.
Oh, that far back.
No, I'm kidding. When was the first, what was your first theatrical experience?
Well, I was a wee lad.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And the reason I became an actor, again, my dad was in the military. We were stationed in Europe, and in the place that we were stationed, it was a NATO base in Germany. There's no American school. So my father sent my sister and I to the Belgian school. There was the choice of the English school or a Belgian school or a German school. We went to a Belgian school. My dad was raised speaking French, so it was an opportunity for us to learn our native tongue, from his perspective. And so we went to a Belgian school, and I learned to read in French. I mean, we were just dropped into an elementary school where no one spoke a word of English, and we didn't speak a word of French.
Oh,
and it's amazing. Young people are amazing sponges and amazingly smart, and we were in that group. We managed within a couple weeks to make do and get by, and then before long, by the time we left, I was at the top of my class when I left. Yeah, that's just to say that it might seem to an adult like an extreme situation, but for a kid, it's nothing. Kids learn languages freely. Anyway, so when I left in the at the end of the 3rd grade, I was in love with my teacher, who made the unfortunate mistake of getting engaged to some adult guy and broke my heart.
Oh.
But so
how old were you?
I was 8.
Okay,
9.
so Nova,
Well,
and top of your class.
Well, I don't
no
think
less.
she was in love with me, in retrospect.
You don't think? Did that have anything to do with you being the top of the class, the shoo-shoo?
Yes, because she had a little 45 record that she played for us every day, a France Gall, French singer, and these little songs that we would sing together. And she had said whoever finishes at the top of the class at the end of the year would get this record. And so that it was my reason for being in the 3rd grade. And And so, because this little American boy had written a poem, and they wanted to show that off. So at the end of the year, there's a commencement exercise for the whole school, and for the performances, they selected, we all sang and did different things, but they wanted me, the little American boy, to come out and recite this poem that he had written. They didn't know I was in love with Herb, that's why I wrote it, but anyway, they wanted me to recite this poem. So my mother, who was very proud and excited, dressed me in my best Glen plaid suit, 3-piece suit, 8 years old. And it came time for the poem, and they pulled the curtain back a little, and I walked out onto the stage in all this light, audience full of people. And before I could get a word out of my mouth, this laughter started, and then more laughter, and pretty soon the entire auditorium, they were all laughing. And my mother was humiliated.
Oh.
Because I found out later, in European culture of the time, especially on a British Army base, young boys wore shorts. They didn't wear long pants. So having me come out in a 3-piece suit with long pants was like putting me in a small adult costume. It looked like to them it was a joke. And so they all laughed.
Oh my God.
But I thought it was great. Excuse me.
You enjoyed the laughter?
Of course I did. I didn't know why they were laughing.
You didn't end up in years of therapy after that?
No. I became a class clown because I walked out and here, all I had to do was walk out and breathe, and they all laughed.
Love me. Oh my gosh, I wish we didn't have to take a break. We just took a break. We have to take another break. This is the Arts in Hawaii on the ThinkTech Hawaii series. I'm Donna Blanchard with Ed Bourgeois. We'll be right back.
Aloha, I'm Maria Kashem of ThinkTech Hawaii, and I want to tell you about our ThinkTech talk shows. If you didn't know it, ThinkTech streams video and audio for all of its shows live on the internet from 2 to 5 p.m. every weekday afternoon, and we replay them all night long on ustream.tv. Visit thinktechhawaii.com for our live stream and YouTube links. Raise your awareness on ThinkTech. I'm Maria Kashem, and I'll see you there.
Hi, we're back. This is the Arts in Hawaii on the ThinkTech digital series, and I don't want to say any more of my intro. I want to get right back to the story. So, you had, this was your first experience on the stage. No, I'm not going to ask that. Let's move forward from there. You felt that love coming from the audience and the teacher.
She went ahead and married this other guy anyway, despite my brilliant debut.
Do you want to say her name? Do you want to?
No.
Okay.
Actually, I've forgotten her name.
Oh, okay. That's poetic.
Mademoiselle something.
Was there a theater program in the school? Were you involved in school theater
that was
programs
long
at all?
before. That was just school. That was just elementary school. We came back to the United States, and then in the American school system, then they were doing plays, and I started doing, little elementary plays, and just like anyone else does.
Yeah.
But I think it's the experience and what that does to you as an individual that's important. And I firmly believe, and that's why I'm really firmly believe in outreach and educational activities with our arts organizations. Because I just happen to believe, having had an experience like that, and then you talk to other artists, and everyone has had a seminal experience, whether they even remember it or not. But for every artist, there's a moment when they were sitting in a theater and something that occurred, just they said, I want to do that.
Yeah.
Or saw someone painting or sculpting or whatever it is. It's not just theater, but in any artistic form. For every artist, there was a moment where they saw something and they thought, I want to do that. And so it's when I was in college, we were doing a show, and Catholic University. When I went there, the founder of the whole of the program, Father Hartke was still around, and he had founded the program in the 40s and made it what it was, and he was still there, sort of as the emeritus founder. And there was a show where it was so popular, and we were sold out every show, and it was going to run. They wanted to extend the show, and if they extended the show, the entire cast had to agree, because it meant that we would be staying over our spring break. We'd have to give up our spring break so that it could be extended for another week, and we all agreed. And he sort of inspired us by saying, all of those young kids that are out there watching you, for each one of them, this could be their moment when what you do inspires them to become the next Mozart or Beethoven or Picasso. You never know as an artist whether what you're doing is being watched or seen by someone whose life will be changed by that experience. So even on your worst day, forget about the fact that you're missing spring break. Don't dwell on that. I mean, we all agreed to do it. But even on your worst day on stage, it could be someone else's, some observer's best moment. So you never know. It happens to actors all the time. I had a great performance. Well, actually, everyone else thought it was pretty lackluster. But as a performer, you could say, I had a terrible performance, and someone out there thought it was brilliant.
Yeah.
We're often our worst judges, our own worst judges. So anyway, I firmly believe that what we do, you never know when it's lighting a spark for somebody.
That's really noble perspective, especially for you to have been exposed to at such a young age, to think of inspiring, not only telling the story and bringing the piece to the audience, but actually thinking of inspiring future artists and forms of expression.
Well, and particularly in the work that I do now, it's all about that, right? I mean, it's all about carrying forward. I think in our European tradition, we don't necessarily think that way, that we're transmitting culture, but we are. And Native peoples are very focused on that because it's survival. It's about culture surviving.
Yeah.
And the beauty of all the terrible traumatic things that have happened to Native people is that there have been survivors who are strong people and carry this knowledge, and often in secret, often illegally, often in small quiet places. Somebody's been teaching somebody, and that because of that moment, that transmission has been able to occur for future generations. Native people are really aware of that because, for many of them, for centuries, they've lived at risk of termination, at risk of loss, losing their culture.
Of losing that.
Very few of us have had the experience of not being able to speak the language that we spoke at home and being punished for doing that. And that's happened to all Native people. It's happened to other people too. I mean, my father was punished for speaking French in school when the nuns were making sure everyone in America spoke English. That happened to a lot of minority populations, not just indigenous to this country, but minority populations that came in and had to assimilate. So it's not a unique experience to Native people, but that being aware of that process of transmitting culture, and very often that's through language, is right up front in Native people's minds.
Where did you? And we're gonna have to wrap up pretty quickly here. So can you give us just a little look into where that moment was for you as an artist when you recognized the strength of art to be a conduit for cultural information and preservation?
The big one for me, my interest in working at the Alaska Native Heritage Center is a different story. And interestingly enough, it had to do with collaborating between the opera company and the Native Heritage Center. Western artists, opera artists, and indigenous artists doing work together.
Oh.
you know, and what is the common language that we speak? Because we, as artists, as people, we speak a common language. We're all humans, right? We're all expressing something. And so it's interesting to find places where we connect, you know, because we tend to say, that's foreign to me, that's alien to me. Opera singing, native dance, yeah. But when they sit in a room together, and that's what I would do as a producer, is say, well, just listen to this opera song and see what happens. Well, what do the words mean? The words mean floating down the river in this boat, and the birds flying overhead, and the moon on the water. Well, that's an opera aria, but all of a sudden the native dancers are dancing it, right? I mean, we have these connections. The moment for me where it became powerful was being able to bring artists together where I could see the light bulbs going off in all of these people who had never written a play before. And to see that just within a group of 20 people, and every one of them finishes a play and are telling stories that are powerful stories of healing and of their people. And I mean, there have been careers set off because of this 3-year program. That inspires me.
Wow.
That inspires me.
That inspires me. I'm very appreciative happy that you have come here today, and I'm happy that you came to the island.
Me too.
And I definitely would love to have you come back with Auntie Vicky.
Yes,
I'd
because
love
we
to
do need to talk about Pa'i a little bit.
The Pa'i Foundation.
Especially about this Saturday, which is the Kaka'ako Arts and Music Festival at Kaka'ako Gateway Park,
Okay.
right there at Cook Street, right down by the water in Kaka'ako.
Okay.
Free event from 10 to 4, food, entertainment, games, stuff for kids, keiki. It's going to be a great day. It's all free, so come down and join us.
Okay, thank you very much for saying that. And your website is?
Pa'iFoundation.org.
.org. I'm very sorry that we have to wrap up this interview. I am Donna Blanchard of Kumukuhua Theater. This is the Arts in Hawaii on the ThinkTech radio series. We've been talking with Ed Bourgeois of the Pa'i Foundation. Thank you to our production manager, Ian Davidson, who's in my ear right now, our communications director, Chrissy Goffigan, and to Jay Fidel, who somehow manages to put it all together. Thank you to you for listening and watching. And to check out our previous broadcasts on YouTube, just go to thinktechhawaii.com. And please like us on Facebook.